There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. We're always happy to have Peter back on and give us an update on what's going on in the indie world. However, I would like to just quickly start. Just indulge me for a moment. I caught up with a couple of your posts recently, and one of them I saw was the ever present one by Aldous Huxley, which knowing is an interesting character, as you know, and obviously his most famous book, Brave New World, and Brave New World Revisited. Looking back on it, and to sum it up, I just want to paint the picture of where we are now in the UK. So, and then we'll get onto the constitution issues. That's okay, because I always find this endlessly fascinating, and it does describe to me anyway the sort of external and the internal world of what's happening here in the UK. So, of course, the famous quote by Huxley is, by means of ever more effective methods of mind manipulation, the democracies will change their nature. The quaint old forms, elections, parliaments, Supreme Courts, and all the rest will remain. But the underlying substance will be a new kind of totalitarianism. All the traditional names, all the hallowed slogans will remain exactly what they were in the good old days, but democracy and freedom will be the theme of every broadcast and editorial. Meanwhile, the ruling oligarchs and its highly trained elite of soldiers, policemen, thought manufacturers, and mind manipulators will quietly run the show as they see fit. Now, what this is right now, as we speak, with just what's happened with the prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist organization. Do you remember for years, Peter? I'm sure you've heard, I remember many years ago, back in 2015, you'd hear someone saying, I wonder how long it's going to be till us nationalists to prescribe terrorists. And I remember that always sticking in my mind, and people would make a joke about it. It's no longer a joke. This is where we are. I mean, if you look at the legislation that we've brought out there, I mean, they just have to sign a piece of paper, and that could well happen to us constitutionally. Do you get what I mean?
I absolutely do. It's something I've long warned about. I mean, right back way before the vote in 2014, I was warning that the British state has the power to pretty much alter the constitution and alter our constitutional rights in any way it chooses. And there is, as you say, there is nothing to stop it prescribing the nationalist organisations across the UK, much in the same way as Spain does, and other countries, of course. So, yeah, it's a very real possibility. But 10, 12, 13 years ago, people poo-pooed the suggestion. They said, no, that could never happen, you could never imagine them prescribing the SNP, because at that time there was just the SNP. And in a way, they were right at that time. It was difficult to imagine. It was possible to imagine, in a realistic perspective, tell you that it's perfectly possible because they have that power. But they'd never really demonstrated that power in any overt way. But with the prescribing of Palestine Action, are we even allowed to say the name?
Yeah, I think we can still say the name.
With the prescribing of Palestine Action, they have overtly exercised that that power. It is the power of the dictator, the power of the absolute monarch. Yes. The law is what we say it is, and we say this is the law, and dare the courts to get in the way because they've showed they're willing to trample all over the courts as well. We've no backstop. There are no checks and balances. We can't talk about being the government, the executive being answerable to Parliament. It's a long time since the executive was answerable to Parliament. Arguably, Tony Blair put the final nails in that coffin, although the work has been ongoing ever since then. More and more power has accrued to the executive and to the Prime Minister, and less power to the Parliament. the ministers are less and less answerable to Parliament. I mean, they now do things like quite openly making policy announcements, which are supposed to be announced in the House of Commons first.
Very
And
Trumpian.
they quite commonly do it now in a press conference or even in a TV interview. And I think the Speaker has actually given up reprimanding for them for it. So they normalise everything. The rate at which they normalise stuff that normally would be unthinkable is accelerating, because each thing that's normalised helps to normalise the next thing.
Yeah.
It's scary. But
It
I tell you what's scarier still, Eddie.
Go on.
The absolute lack of any protest. In pretty much any other country in the world, people would be taken to the streets in their hundreds and thousands, protesting the government's behaviour, the British government's behaviour.
Yes.
Here, we get a wee stooshy on social media, a wee bit of a stir. That's it. Everybody else just goes back to watching their streaming TV.
Well, do you know what I mean? Even just immediately, I mean, it was only at the weekend, as you know, they were prescribed. But some of the media I watch, independent media and stuff, already, they're straight into this. They have to be very careful what they say about this whole affair. And so anybody who's not really thought about this before, then already you can see this in the media. It not only stops the right to protest, it also prevents the right of information to be, to be given out, to keep people informed. It's like, this is like Huxley said. I mean, free speech and the right to protest are now just slogans, even though it's given out that we still are a free country and we have all these rights, but we simply don't. And so what I'm really wanting to just quickly, without getting into it too much, is just to understand the way I see it, understand the position that we are now in Scotland. We are literally tied to a parliament that is complicit in genocide, taking away our rights to protest and free speech. I mean, to me, this is just, what other reason could we need to not want to have independence? And it's not only is it imperative, morally we need to flipping leave this union. I don't see how this is sustainable for people in Scotland. Never mind the UK. The same things happen in America. We have 80% of people against the war in the UK or against the genocide in Gaza, and yet we still have a government that enacts it. This is no more even a pretense of democracy anymore. Yeah. Sorry to go on. I just want. Do you believe that? I mean, how do you feel?
You're right in what you say, and but for a long time, from Scotland's perspective, from the perspective of the constitutional issue here in Scotland, we keep being told, there's going to be this tipping point. Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister was going to be, that was going to drive people to yes. Boris Johnson came and went and came back again and went again. Now they're telling the same story about Farage, and I think people are accepting it. They're accepting it the same way as they accepted it with Boris Johnson. Sorry, the name went right out of my head there. And people don't seem to learn from any of these things. And none of the things, Boris Johnson, Brexit, all the rest, none of these things, I think, starting with evil.
The
day of the morning
the day after
the referendum, starting with that, everything, there's hardly a day passed, but the British government hasn't done something, imposed something on us, or treated us in some manner which somebody somewhere is saying, oh, that's the thing, that's the straw that will break the camel's back. The camel's back's fine. The Camel's
That's
looking
really
like it'll
worrying. That's
last
really
forever.
worrying, Peter. I mean, honestly, if we get to this stage, it's really worrying.
The problem is that we've got into this habit, and the SNP take a large part of the blame for this, because that has been their excuse, through the Sturgeon era, which I would say we're still in the Sturgeon era. Throughout the Sturgeon era, that has been a ready excuse for not doing anything. We don't need to do anything. The British state, Westminster, is doing it all for us, except that there's no actual evidence that it's working. There's no evidence that it's happening. But that's the story that we've been told. And people have got accustomed to this idea that the independence, the desire for independence will be driven from outside. It will be up to what others do. And that is just wrong, because it is entirely down to what we do. It's our action that will bring about independence. It's our action that will restore independence. It should be quite obvious that by now that it doesn't matter what Westminster does. They can get away with anything. It has to be our action that restores independence.
Well, I do agree with you there. How could I not disagree with you there? But I mean, I think I've said this to you before. I don't. I mean, maybe I'm picking you up wrong here, but I don't exclude the external world maybe as much as you do, because I think that could well become a catalyst. I'm surprised. I mean, the trouble with this, taking away of our right to protest, just quickly go back to this because I think it's important, is if we can get to this place now where, well, like you said earlier, there's not that many people, there should be hundreds of thousands of people, in protest. But of course, so many people, they're going to go, I'm not going to go and get arrested, literally for it. And so what that sounds to me like you're saying is that if what can happen then in that external world is that we can have all these rights and everything taken away from us. And then how does that empower us as, the individuals to bring about what we want, an independent state, especially if by doing so, we're going to make ourselves criminals, open to prosecution.
There are ways of doing it. I mean, you don't have to be out in the streets to take action to restore independence. I mean, the problem of going on demonstrations, that is problematic, I would say, for most people. The only people or most of the people for whom it's not problematic, who don't care about getting arrested, are the very people who are likely to cause trouble. So that where you end up with this whole policy, this whole direction of travel, it increases the number. It puts off the reasonable people, so that you've only got the extremists still going. They will always go. This is just the same as with voting. You put off the sort of ordinary voters, if I can just use that expression. You put them off one way and another. You put them off, but the extremists will always vote. So their proportion of the electorate, the active electorate, grows. Same thing applies to demonstrations.
They've extended their powers to arrest people, to arrest the people who are sharing information, Peter, not just protesting.
You criminalize it, and it deters people from going on demonstrations, other than the people who are going to cause bother. So that then justifies more regulation to prevent the trouble that there inevitably is at demonstrations when you stop the reasonable people going. And it does apply to information as well. If you criminalize the sharing of information, the spreading of information, then the people who have something reasonable, sensible to say are the people who are going to be deterred. It's the idiots that are telling people to go out and throw cobblestones at the police. Yeah, they're the ones who will just go ahead anyway, because they don't give a damn. But the vast majority of people will be deterred from even sharing information. I mean, I was joking. I was only half joking when I said, "Oh, are we still allowed to say Palestine action?" Because that will be the sort of niggling thought in people's heads, and there
Yes,
is no
exactly.
more form of censorship more insidious, Eddie, than
Yeah,
self-censorship. When you
yeah,
start
exactly. The stop police.
censoring yourself,
Mhm.
to the
It
end of
is.
the wedge, my friend.
No. Well, anyway, so I mean, let's get on to the constitutional issue. But I just wanted to set that up in as much that
Yeah,
this is where we are in the
it's
UK
very
now, and I think
relevant,
it's
Eddie. It's
frightening.
very relevant.
Yeah, and like I said, we can, yeah, but we'll leave that for now. I'll tell you what I want you to do, just for our viewers, and just I just summed it up in one sentence. Would you be able to quickly tell us uh, what I would class as the powerful story of the Scottish Parliament? Reading about what you're talking about with the Constitution, what's going on with Liberate Scotland and stuff like this. If you would explain to us how you term the powerful story, and it's about narrative, you know, I get what you mean. So, but I'd rather you, if you go ahead and give your
Right,
explanation.
right. There are two stories being told about the Scottish Parliament at the moment. One, and I don't speak for her, but so I am representing Sarah Salyer's position. She is perfectly at liberty to say that I'm talking rubbish, that that's not our position at all. Excuse me. Excuse me. But to simplify it, that story, that what we'll call the Sarah Salyers story, is that the Scottish Parliament is a creature of the British state. It's a branch of Westminster. It's an executive branch of Westminster. It is, in fact, the colonial government in Scotland, and that is all it ever can be. That is it. That is fixed forevermore. It cannot be anything else. The other story, that's it. That story ends there. That is the end of the story of the Scottish Parliament. As far as the Sarah Salyer's version goes, we must get rid of it. It must end. That's
And they
finished.
would seek to establish a new and something new.
That's a separate thing.
Oh.
Because there's a whole stack of questions about this setting up a new body. You know, a whole stack of questions, and that's a bit of a sidetrack.
Okay.
So we'll stick with the two stories. The other story, the alternative story, but my story, is that the Scottish Parliament that we have is the original Scottish Parliament, which was taken from us in 1707. And under pressure from the nationalist movement, it was returned to us in 1999, but it was returned in chains. It was returned with all sorts of restrictions that the British state had put on it. So our fight actually is to take it back, to remove those chains, so that what we have left is our Scottish Parliament. It is our Scottish Parliament. It has just been usurped, hijacked by the British state. And that means that there's an ongoing story. That's the ongoing story of our fight to recover it, to repossess it. And that's actionable. That is something that we can do. That calls upon us to act. The alternative, the other version, really doesn't call on us to do anything because the Scottish Parliament is pretty much taken out of the equation. But the Scottish Parliament is essential to the process of restoring independence. Even the Sarah Salyer's version of this story concedes this, because although that version of the story takes the Scottish Parliament out of the equation altogether, it then has to replace it with something totally like the Scottish Parliament in terms of what it can do. Now, how you do that is seriously problematic. How you set up such a body? Who's going to sit on it? And from whence do they get a democratic legitimacy? They cannot be elected. So what is the story of this? And if it's set up alongside the existing Scottish Parliament, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for conflict, if ever I saw one. You'd have effectively two competing legislatures, or one pretender to the legislature and one legislature, internationally recognized legislature. So there's lots of problems, but the other story, the Sarah Sawyer story, admits that the Parliament of some kind is necessary. Otherwise, why do they want to set up this alternative body? And I say, well, if it's necessary, then why not use what we already have? Just tell a different story about it, and you make it what the story tells you about. Because if we take it back, then it is the Scottish Parliament restored. It's just a case of taking it back, taking control of it, and being clever how you go about it. That's another part of it. You have to be clever about how you go about it, and that's why I lit on the issue of self-determination, the right of self-determination. If we focus on that, we're on very strong grounds because we're on the grounds of human rights. So if we take back to the Scottish Parliament power over the Constitution, it's like de-reserve it. So simply assert it, because that is the way power is taken.
Yeah.
We assert power over the Constitution in order that we can have a facility by which to exercise our right of self-determination, there being no other way. There is no other way that we can actually get to exercise our right of self-determination. It has to be by the Scottish Parliament taking the power to legislate for that referendum. It's no good the Westminster giving Holyrood power to hold a parliament, because Westminster will not and cannot, constitutionally, cannot give Holyrood the power to have a proper constitutional referendum. It would fatally undermine their doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. So the Scottish Parliament has to take that power. That's the only way it can acquire that power. And this is very much the way changes in power happen. One body takes the power and defies the other to try and take it back, to challenge that. Either they successfully challenge it and they take it back, or they don't. They challenge it and the challenge is unsuccessful. So you pick the issue on which you have the strongest grounds to meet any challenge. You're in the strongest position to meet any challenge. And you can hardly get a stronger position than defending what is arguably the most fundamental human right that there is, the right of self-determination. So it really is. It's not all that complicated, Eddie.
So can I just ask then, just to try and simplify it in my mind and maybe some other people, is this the case then where Sarah seems to be, tell me if I'm wrong, I think this is what you're saying, that she's advocating that we can't do anything that's not illegal, as it were, but what you're saying is that we use it sort of politically, we make it legal and then let let the UK challenge it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm very hesitant to seem like I'm speaking for Sarah here, but
yeah, me too.
Our position, which I've attempted to familiarise with myself with, her position is that there is no there is no UK. The UK doesn't exist.
Yeah. All right.
And
okay.
that the Scottish Parliament is not the Scottish Parliament. It's not the Parliament of Scotland. So it strips away all of that.
So would we not be able to just reconvene the Parliament of that was disbanded? And when he said in 1999, can we not just do that then?
According to Winnie Ewing, that's what happened in 1999. The Scottish Parliament was reconvened, and I'm just taking Winnie Ewing at her word.
Why do you think Sarah's got a problem with that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really can't speak for Sarah, and I haven't really thought about. I can't say I know for sure, but in theory, or it sounds to me like what you're saying is we just, we take that power and we say, this is our parliament, this is our constitution, and that's it.
Precisely right. We take it. We take it. There is no route to independence through the legal and constitutional framework, which has evolved in the UK under the imperative, and it is an imperative, to preserve the union. There is no way. The whole Sturgeon doctrine of a legal and constitutional route being legal and constitutional in British terms, it's a nonsense. That route cannot exist. But Sarah is, as far as I can tell, she's going with a strictly legalistic perspective that the union between Scotland and England was never finalised according to the agreed terms. Therefore, the UK doesn't exist, and the Scottish Parliament was set up by the British state, and that's what it is, and it can never be anything else. And taking a strictly legal perspective, she's undoubtedly right. She's undoubtedly, but there is more to it than a strictly legalistic perspective. It's politics. What's more, it's constitutional politics. So there's this much wider perspective, and there's much more room for manoeuvre there. And like I say, it all comes down to the story that we tell. If we are telling the story of a Scottish Parliament that is ours but has been hijacked, not only does that give us a stronger campaigning position, a stronger story for campaigning, it keeps to us this facility to actually legislate for a proper constitutional referendum. It means we've got this smooth process. We simply take over the Scottish Parliament and move through the Scottish Parliament. Of course, there's always a possibility that the British state might try and challenge it, but I'm totally confident that if we do it on the grounds of the human right of self-determination, if we do it on that grounds, the British state will have no case. We will win that one. In fact, I'm so certain that we would be in a winning position that I strongly suspect that the British state might not even challenge it, because challenging it would involve them saying in open court, with an international, a global audience, they're saying things that they just don't want to say. Such as, no, Scotland isn't a real nation there, and the Scottish people aren't real people, so they can't be sovereign, they can't have the right of self-determination, and so on. They don't want to be saying these things in court. So they might well back down, or they might well be advised by their lawyers to back down. So that is just a possibility. But even if there is a challenge, it's a challenge that goes to the European Court of Human Rights, or possibly the International Court of Justice. Certainly not to the UK Supreme Court, which would just be a nonsense. So it takes it away from the UK Supreme Court and takes it into the international courts, which should suit Sarah fine. She should be fine with that. But this whole point about just not making use of the parliament, not using what is there, I really don't get that at all. And the whole thing about the UK not existing, I don't know. I don't know what comes of that either. I mean, it does exist. It maybe wasn't formalised in the way it should have been, but there's 300 years of custom and practice that says that it exists. So one way or another, it exists. And it doesn't matter how it exists. It does exist. And what is important is that the way out of it remains the same anyway. Supposing it wasn't set up, and we know for a fact, I mean, Professor Black has made that very clear, we know for a fact that the UK was not formed as per the agreement. It was basically just an English takeover. Professor Black has enumerated all the evidence for that very effectively. But it really doesn't matter. It makes no difference to the process for getting out of the union. That remains the same anyway. And as far as I'm concerned, that the only process that there is Scottish UDI. And I'm confident that it is the only process because nobody else has identified an alternative. Nobody else, none of the political parties are telling you how they're going to restore independence. Alpa was tweeting stuff just today about, the why of independence, that this is the why of independence. We know the why of independence. We're living with it every day. We've been getting told about the why of independence for what, 12, 13 years and more. But I'm talking about just in what I call the modern era, the independence movement. Every day we're being told why. All the things that we were talking about earlier, Brexit, Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, all of that, the prescription of Palestine, all of that, all of those things are the why. What we're never being told is the how. Never. But the political parties, none of them, the politicians, none of them have said how they propose to do it. And until they do, they're not going to do it. Because if they're not telling you, if they're not assuring you that they're going to do something, then they're going to do nothing. And we're going into the 2026 election with, instead of just one party with not a clue how to go about restoring independence, we might have two. We'll have one, it will still be the SNP. The SNP is still going to dominate. That's what all the polls are telling us. We don't have any better information. The SNP is still going to be the dominant force. There might be some ALAPA, whatever. It makes no difference. None of them actually have a plan. None of them are pushing any formal proposal saying this, and this is what we will do after we're elected in order to restore independence. So it's was no credible story on the how. And until there is, we're going nowhere.
Can I just ask you then? I mean, there's something obviously I notice in your literature. You're quite often saying it's a good point, and I wonder if you just elaborate on it a little bit or try to simplify it for us. It's kind of when you say, when you critique other, other organisations, say, or other commitments, like you say with Liberate Scotland and stuff, a few others, right? But you often do say it's like, but we're all working together. Like you said, that was it. You said the decolonized mind. We might not be working exactly, down the same or working along the same math, but we do have the idea that we are trying to essentially all liberate Scotland. So, Can you just kind of simplify to us how you see like all these different equations working out? What to you is the positive parts that keep us together? I mean, how, for instance, will it affect, the route that Sarah's taking? Is that going to have a detrimental effect, or can it have a positive effect? Can you just or different parties? Can you just give a simplification of how you think this might pan out for the ordinary Joe Bloggs?
If you're talking when you talk about Sarah Sawyer's, if you're talking about the Salvo Liberation UN initiative,
yeah,
then that could be very helpful. In itself, we have to make this very clear because there's a lot of people have the wrong idea about it. In itself, that initiative will not restore Scotland's independence. That was a point that I made at the last SSRG conference a couple of months back. And there's general agreement about that from the people who are responsible for the Salvo Liberation UN initiative. That on its own, it won't. Obviously, that is not something that they want to go on about a lot. You can understand that. They want to talk about the positives of what they are doing. But I thought it important to make this point that by itself, it does nothing. It does nothing about restoring Scotland's independence. It changes the ground on which we operate in our favour. If it is successful, it changes the ground in our favour quite significantly.
Right, okay.
So it doesn't do any more than that. But it only works, it's only of advantage to us if there is a political and parliamentary process, an internal to Scotland political and parliamentary process that can exploit that advantage that it gives us. And that political and parliamentary process has to be in place regardless of the UN initiative. Whether it goes ahead, whether it succeeds or fails, you still need that political and parliamentary process. So we have to get that clear in people's minds, because a lot of people run away with the idea that the UN initiative
it's all been done for us.
Is going to be the thing that does it, and it
is. I get that.
This exactly the same can be said of a lot of the other initiatives, and I really don't want to name any in particular because I honestly don't want to give them the oxygen of publicity. But there are people, snake oil salesmen, who are selling solutions that are not solutions. They're all glittering generalities and slogans and lots of bold rhetoric. But when you get right down to it, they actually have no plan. They have no actual solid, credible proposals. They are basically just nonsense. And to me, they're dangerous in that they divert energies and resources from a genuine independence campaign, an independence campaign that has a direction and it has an objective, that has a plan, that has a story. It's fully equipped. These other initiatives, and I know which you're talking about, they are just other political parties. They are just in it for getting elected and getting the rewards of being elected. That is it. That's all they're in it for, and that's all of them. They most certainly are not in it for the purpose of restoring Scotland's independence, because they can't tell us how they're going to do it. They will tell us stories about how they're going to do it, but those stories are so full of holes, they pretty much don't exist. You know, they're just nonsense. They just talk utter nonsense, but they talk nonsense in a way that it sounds inspiring. It's quite easy to do that. It's quite easy to get people riled up. People are desperate for something. They're desperate for anything. This is a big part of the problem. And again, it goes back to SNP leaving this void that people are jumping into it, and the people are grabbing at whatever comes along. You remember the way people jumped from the SNP to Alapa, within 20 minutes of Alapa being formed, they were all jumping ship. Only a few months later for them all to discover, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't what I thought it was. Well, I told them from the start, this is not what you think it is. But I get tell ye rights out of that, but I didn't get any satisfaction.
I mean, let me push back a little. Let me push back a little bit there. I mean, because to me, when I see people, and yes, starting a new party or whatever, I mean, bloody Elon Musk is at it now. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is doing it now, and so what I am saying is that yeah, in your respect, and yeah, certainly, in the past, it doesn't give you much hope because of what sort of usually has happened. But what other avenue do people have? But apart from let's start off a new party and hope it's gained some traction. I mean, this is a consequence of how we do politics. So I don't think we can just discard it.
That's fine if they're a party with some objective, with some clear plan in mind, and with principles. If they've got ideas and principles, that's fine. But when the parties that are simply set up in order to get people elected, that's no. I mean, the Jeremy Corbyn new party, I don't even know if it's got a name yet. That's interesting because Jeremy Corbyn is an interesting character. He's certainly a genuine socialist. He certainly has ideas. And so that is interesting in terms of UK politics, English politics in particular. Musk's party is also interesting.
It's probably just rubbish, I know, but yeah.
But a lot of the others are just jumping into a pool, and because they're coming along and they're joining in the existing party political system, they become just like the other parties. They don't operate in any different way. This is one of the things that established power does. It restricts the space in which countervailing power can operate. So that countervailing power can only operate in the space that's left for it, and that space is defined by established power. And if established power is defining that space, it's going to define it in its own advantage. So every once in a while, you get you'll get an organisation that actually is pushing at that envelope that the established power creates, that sort of bubble in this sphere of competing power. There's this bubble that that established power allows so that it can contain countervailing power. And every once in a while, there's a countervailing power that comes along that actually pushes at the envelope of that contained space. And I think Jeremy Corbyn's venture might be something like that. I mean, if you go back in history, the Labour movement, the original Labour movement, that was a countervailing power that pushed at the envelope. The suffragettes, the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement in the US. Our own movement, the independence movement, should be that. But our independence movement is barely a countervailing power at all, never mind the kind of countervailing power that actually pushes the envelope, that actually
that's the big
pushes the
question, isn't it?
space.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big question. This is where I'm always in. I mean, to me, it seems to be just it is what it is. But I suppose the picture is then, it's like, once again, if we have the Scottish National Party that are not doing what we want it to do, I'm speaking as a nationalist. And of course, when you're talking about all these other little parties and initiatives here and there and stuff, and you get this great big gamut, but it's not really it's not really getting us anywhere, is it? There's no like countervailing pushback there. So I'm still stuck in this place. I can't see unless you can get some kind of nexus between the two to get something to work. I can't see where that countervailing structure is going to come from, Peter. What do you say?
Well, yeah, I have concluded that what I talk about, Scottish UDI, that's the only thing that's going to work. And if there is something
Well,
else,
who's going to pull that lever? Sorry, Peter, that's what I mean. Who's going to do that? Because the SNP's not going to do it.
oh, I've no idea. I've no
Yeah.
idea. I can't tell you. I can't tell you who's going to do it. I can only tell you that that's what needs to be done. And aye,
Okay, yeah.
that's it. I can also tell you that for all you say about the SNP, the SNP has to be changed. If we don't,
For sure.
if we don't change, the SNP is going to be in power after the 2026 election. That is the assumption. That's the only safe assumption that we can make. And you operate on the basis of known facts and safe assumptions. It's not safe to assume that, for example, one of these small parties, right? Okay, I can't avoid it. Liberate Scotland. Their plan is they first relies on them becoming the Scottish government. Well, that isn't going to happen. So that plan falls flat right away. But then they're going to do stuff, and actually they can't tell you they don't know anything about parliamentary process or anything like that. So that's the stage at which they get to be talking nonsense. And there's there are a lot of things like that. I'm sorry, I've lost my. I didn't want to get on to talking about Liberate Scotland. That's the problem here. There are lots of things going on, but there's nothing that'll actually work. I'm sorry, Eddie. I totally lost my point there.
No, it's okay. I was just trying to get you to speak about, how do we get to pull the lever, of even like getting like your, the manifesto for independence and stuff. The way, just tell me if I'm wrong
the
here.
lever.
If the SNP are not playing game, which they're not, and they need to change, obviously, of course. But wouldn't it be right to say that the only way they're going to change is through being pressurized into change? But if there's no threat there, if there's nothing there that's forcing them to change, how do we even begin to think about getting?
That's right. There is nothing, and I have concluded, Alapa, all that feet to the fire nonsense. If slogans could restore our independence, we'd have been there long ago.
Yeah, that's true.
The fact of the matter is, just looking at it as a realist who knows a little bit something about how the whole system works, parliamentary process, etc. There is absolutely no way Alpa was ever going to be in a position to put any kind of pressure on the SNP. It simply can't happen. Or going back to what I was saying earlier, we cannot safely assume that it will happen because there is so much against it. And even if they won a few seats in Parliament, even if they won a handful, say half a dozen seats in 2026, and there was an SNP government, either an SNP minority government or an SNP government with some kind of coalition-like arrangement. They don't much like coalitions, but it's a coalition-like arrangement. So it's an SNP government. What's Alpa going to do? So we're going to threaten to vote against this nominally pro-independence government. That's not going to do them a lot of favours. Are they going to vote against the government's budget? Of course they're not. Well, they're going to stand up and make speeches in Parliament. Well, only if they're allowed, only if the process allows that, which would be once in a while for a restricted time and on a restricted subject. They're not going to get to stand up and talk about independence every time that they want. It just doesn't work that way. So, the idea that they're going to put the SNP under pressure is a total nonsense. I don't like it any more than anybody else does. But I'm enough of a realist to know that the SNP isn't going to just disappear just because I am massively disappointed with them and massively angry at them. The leadership I'm talking about here, they're not going to disappear. All the information that we have suggests that they are still going to be the dominant power after the 2026 election. So if we're talking about making the 2026 election some kind of democratic event which progresses Scotland's cause, it's only going to work if the SNP are on board. That is just the real situation. And all these people fantastically, the magical thinking about some other party is going to come along and suddenly form a government. And, electoral shockers do occasionally happen. But you don't plan something as important as an independence campaign on the basis of some electoral miracle happening. You can't plan on that basis.
I find that really interesting because, like you said, being a realist, being a mearsheimer, as you could call it these days, right? But at the same time, you said yourself, we both agreed that the SNP is not going to do it. So if I'm thinking and I see people and they're starting up a party, to me, I can see why they're doing it. And I can think to myself, well, they're probably not stupid enough to know that they're instantly going to challenge the SNP. I'd imagine their biggest hope is to just get a foothold in the door and maybe over some period of time build up some kind of political capital. I know it's a big ask, but go on.
I don't accept that the SNP can't change. Political parties change all the time. It's just a case of finding the right kind of pressure and the points to apply that pressure.
Well, we don't know what we just said. We don't know what that pressure is.
And also opening up opportunities for them to change. But political parties change all the time, so I don't accept that it's an impossibility to change the SNP.
A near impossibility, Peter.
The point is, whether they actually do it or not, it is still the only way anything can happen. What is the point in throwing all your energy into some other venture if that venture cannot possibly succeed without the SNP on board? What's the point in just ignoring the SNP, saying that they can never change, but saying you're going to do this other venture which is going to make a difference, but it can only make a difference if you've got the SNP on board? There's an illogic there that just grates on my nerves. We did it ourselves. When we were taking the one party approach, which back in the day, it seemed like the obvious approach to take. When we were taking that approach, what we were doing was giving the SNP, because it was the one party, we were giving that party extraordinary power, extraordinary mandates, extraordinary support. In some cases, unquestioning support. Even in my own case, it wasn't so much unquestioning support, but I kept quiet about things when I probably shouldn't have done, because we thought we'd give this one party, the party of independence, all the tools and all the power it needs to do the job. Then it failed. but it remains the party with all that power, not as much as it had before, but is still the dominant party. We created that. We created this beast, and then we took the reins off it. We took the leash off it. We took the choke chain off, and we let creeps like Angus Robertson take over. No, creep. That's me being polite. Don is a despicable wee man, a horrible, horrible wee man. Yeah. And folk tell me he's not that wee, but I tell them there's a hell of a lot of ways for a man to be wee, and Angus Robertson's got a full set.
Oh man! Well, listen,
I've got that off my chest, Eddie.
Oh yeah, that's well. I don't know. We'll have to finish up soon. I've got to take my lovely wife to the doctor's for half.
Okay, it's just
we've got a
starting
short
to
while.
get fun.
I know, but we'll catch up again soon.
I've only ripped one person a new arsehole in the whole session. And it's Pierre Angus Robertson.
I'll tell you what, now that we've spoke about, and honestly, tell me, I mean, I might be wrong here, but we do sound, oh God, I'm even more concrete now that we're in a stuck position. But can I just ask you then, I mean, for instance, it looks like the SNP is going to be losing quite a lot of votes. I mean, yes, they'll still be in power, like you said, I don't doubt it. But, you know, even if we look forward to the 2029, you know, UK elections and stuff, and then after that, I mean, what is your, like, I don't know, your 5 year prognosis for the SNP? Because it only seems to be going down for me. And so what happens? So my question, maybe what you could maybe talk about is, where is this process taking us with that? I mean, we don't need to go into the deconstruction of the SNP and how much it's fallen over just the last 10 years. But where is it going? I mean, where does it look like it's going? Because it doesn't look to me like it's going anywhere. And then what dynamic does that introduce to the whole constitutional issue?
The SNP isn't going anywhere. It's stuck very much in a rut. Because we used to talk about the lack of strategic thinking in the SNP. That has now become more than just a lack of strategic thinking. It's almost as if the strategic thinking has become a no-go area.
Just the slogans.
It's almost like it's prohibited. And they are stuck in this place where they are, and they're all they're doing is just trying to stay there, trying to maintain, try and keep what they've got. They're not making, they're not doing anything to move in any direction. And if they're not doing anything to move in any direction, then the electorate will decide in which direction they move, and it will be backwards. So yes, they will lose votes in 2026. They will lose seats. But it makes no difference as far as the constitutional issue is concerned. It would make no difference even if the SNP were reduced to half a dozen seats, because if the Scotland's cause is going to be progressed in the next Parliament, it's going to require every nominally pro-independence vote that's in the chamber. So even if there's only half a dozen SNP MSPs, they're still going to be essential to the whole process. And actually, there's going to be a lot more than that. But as to where they're going, they don't have any direction. The raison d'etre, the thing that held the SNP together was the constitutional issue. And they have nothing to say on the constitutional issue. Absolutely nothing.
No, nothing at all.
So there's that void there as well. I keep talking about a void, but there's voids everywhere you look, where things have been ripped away. I flushed down the toilet. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon and company, Angus Robertson, they basically flushed the constitutional issue down the toilet between 2015 and 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
In that period. Excuse me. And so the SNP doesn't have that anymore. It doesn't hold that anymore. And it hasn't found anything to replace it. It hasn't become a a radical socialist party. It hasn't become a Farageist party. It hasn't become anything. It's just this nonentity led by the very personification of a nonentity in John Swinney, who's a nice man. A nice man. I don't question his commitment to Scotland's cause at all. But he's no leader, and he's not in a position to take either his party or the constitutional the independence movement anywhere. The crucial thing on the constitutional issue is changing the SNP. There are moves internally, I know, within the SNP. There are moves to get
my eyebrows are raising, Peter. Really?
There are branches, there are individuals that are working hard. Of course, the changes that were made to the party, to the constitution, have made it very difficult for anybody to actually even get change discussed.
I know.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I had a really bad cold last week, and I'm
still getting over it.
Quite over it. But what was I saying? They're left with nothing. They're left with absolutely nothing, and that has to change, because, like it or not, they are crucial to the independence movement. And if we take the view, as I do, that restoring Scotland's independence is a matter of the utmost urgency, and therefore we have to be totally focused on the 2026 election as the thing that triggers it, then we must focus also on the SNP. We must be putting pressure on them. And the only thing that can put pressure on them, because Alapa failed to be the party that puts pressure on the SNP, basically because Alapa has no more idea about the how of restoring independence than the SNP does. Or if they know, they're not talking about it because they're scared. But the SNP remains the crucial, it remains the key. We made it the key. And now a lot of people just want to throw the key away. Well, you know what happens when you throw the key away? You can't go anywhere. You're locked in. The SNP has to be the key, but we have to fix it. And the only thing that can do that, Eddie, is the only body which has the strength to do that is the independence movement. And so that's why we set up the Manifesto for Independence petition, because it's not just necessary for the independence movement to want to put pressure on the SNP. That pressure has to be visible. So a simple way of making it visible is a petition. You have a petition with 100,000 signatures demanding that the SNP adopt the Manifesto for Independence, which is basically just rethinking its entire approach to the constitutional issue. You've got 100,000 signatures, 150,000, 200,000 signatures on that petition. That's the kind of pressure no political party can resist. Even the SNP, who are past masters at shutting out voices of dissent, shutting them out and shutting them down, even they would have to take that seriously. 100,000 people, that's the that's the size of vote that no party could possibly ignore.
Well, yeah, we could hope. We could certainly hope for that, Peter. Right, I'll let you get off, and I hope you're feeling better soon.
I think you're mostly over it. I was fine till I started talking to you.
Yeah.
I was fine till I started. Fine till I started ranting. I did for my voice.
Well, listen, before I say Tatar and stuff, I mean, I'll contact Sarah anyway. I want to see if she comes back on the podcast because I want to get her point of view as well. Maybe you two could get together sometime. I'm not trying to be confrontational or whatever. It's just that, to be quite frank with you, I think where we are is in a place where I can't see any definitive progress on the horizon. I can see help, like what's going on with Salvo and stuff, and there's good initiatives and good ideas out there. But like you said yourself, I don't see any real leadership. I don't see something that's
Yeah.
bringing us all together and stuff.
There
Maybe
are
we
two
can.
things. There's two things, Eddie, that actually work together and hold promise, and that is Scottish UDI, my own thing, and the Salvo Liberation UN initiative. Those two things. They complement one another beautifully. They fit together beautifully. Yeah. So take them forward. But then this whole thing about the Scottish Parliament is irrelevant. It can't possibly be, and that's a fly in the ointment because we need that. We need that body. We need that legislature. We just need it to have the correct legislative competence. And we need that story. We need that story to tell. Yeah, I made the point that, sorry, you were wanting to finish up, Eddie.
No, it's fine. I enjoy your idea of the narrative. It's very powerful, the story.
I made the point that one of the most powerful campaigning stories of my lifetime was It's Scotland's Oil. Arguably, that lifted the SNP out of obscurity. It was a powerful story. It's our oil, and there was lots of other bits that you could add on to that. Well, today we've got it's Scotland's energy, it's Scotland's water, it's all Scotland's resources. So there's that story is there, that narrative is there, ready to be exploited. It's not being exploited enough. But to exclude the Parliament from that just seems crazy. To say this is Scotland, we are the people of Scotland, we are sovereign, everything in Scotland is ours, everything in, on and under Scotland and its waters is ours, except the Parliament that we actually elect. That just punctures the whole balloon. It deflates the whole story. You've got to draw the Scottish Parliament into that story. And that, I think, takes us pretty much back to where we started.
Yeah.
That's me rounding off like a professional again there, Ed.
We're doing well. But I mean, I would like to just finish off by saying this to me, I mean, what you're describing there is we need to collectively become aware, right? Have some consciousness and agree to say, this is our world, this is our future, this is the kind of mindset. But then, of course, when you look at Huxley and when he talk, in his world, as you know, the alphas and the deltas, they get to play and have lots of things, and the rest have their soma. And so they don't really involve themselves with politics. Everything is laid down, and you can't do this and you can't do that. Sorry, I don't want to open up Pandora's box here, but we somehow have to circumvent that, what Huxley's talking about, our consumerism to the exclusion of everything else, where we can't get together and say, why don't we join together and try to make our town better or something? But everybody is living on the edge with austerity and stuff like this, and what's going on in the world, and AI. There was so much going on. It's so hard to get people, engaged.
Insecurity, Ed. Insecurity. The whole system runs on insecurity. Insecurity. Mind these wee aeroplanes that you get, wee balsa wood aeroplanes. That's what the whole system, the political and economic system that we have at the moment, it runs on imbalance, insecurity, inequity, injustice, unbalance. Everything is kept off balance, and that is what provides the tension, which drives the whole system.
I
Well,
like that analogy. It's very good.
it drives the system certainly, but it's driving it to destruction. Nobody can deny that capitalism has worked in the sense of producing more and more goods and more conveniences and all the rest of it. Yes, but in the process, it's also driving us to destruction. So it is far from ideal. And at the heart of it all is this insecurity, making people feel insecure all the time.
Yeah.
When people feel insecure and you're in a position of power, and being in a position of power, you can offer them a sense of security, then you're the savior.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Age old.
that's that's the way it happens. So it's curious because it's the insecurity that keeps the system going, that makes people insecure, that keeps the system going. The only way that
It's
we could
literally the force
actually,
that, yeah, I get you. It's a
the
good
only way
analogy,
the
Peter.
only way we could break that, we could break the system is by making people feel secure. But the system won't allow us to make people feel secure because
Yeah. And anyway, like before I go, I would just like to say I did see that you shared that weird moment with Netanyahu and Trump where he gave, nominate. I mean, I can see that coming, but just to me, this is the final way to end it. If you want to just look at the state of the world, just look at that one event and see how ridiculous it is. It's to me, it's not that trivial. It's poignant in what it's saying. It really shows that topsy turvy world or the Orwellian world now. Anyway, better shut up.
it's utter madness. It's
Utter madness.
utter madness.
Right, listen, Pete, I've really, really enjoyed that, and we'll catch up soon because there's quite a lot going on, so we'll catch up very soon. And like I said, I'll see if I can get Sarah on and just see what her see what
I don't want to make a big deal.
No, I know you're not making a big
It's
thing
not
of
a
it.
big
I don't
falling
want to.
out or anything.
Yeah,
It's just
no,
that
absolutely.
it's
I'm
two
just
different perspectives. That's
yeah,
all.
me personally, yeah, me personally, I'm just. I mean, I'm sure, like yourself, we're all trying to orientate ourselves. That's it. Trying to figure out what's more likely. What's the more
Yeah,
possible futures.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter, and I'll
Thank you,
catch you soon.
Eddie.
No worries. All the best.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you, Peter. Thank you very much. Now I need to stop recording. Oh, there we go.